Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you're listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. Today I'm going to talk to you about narcissism and domestic abuse. We could probably say that all forms of abuse are narcissistic in nature, and I'm going to say it. Who else but narcissists believe it's okay to attack, hit, or even kill somebody because they're upset? Who else but narcissists believe it's okay to abuse another person because of something that's totally unrelated to that person, such as having a bad day at work? What other type of person thinks equality means they get everything while everyone else gets nothing? Only a narcissist would be so incensed and outraged by rejection or the loss of control over another person that they believe taking that person's life is a reasonable reaction. Only a narcissist would need power and control over someone so badly that they would actually harm them to get it, and only a narcissist believes it's reasonable to beat or even kill somebody for hurting their feelings. Now, of course, not all people who engage in violence at all are narcissists. Nearly everybody has a breaking point, and even rational people lose their tempers sometimes. But if someone has a pattern of being abusive, it's probably a safe bet that they, at the very least, have narcissistic traits. The only way it's possible to justify abusing other people is by telling yourself that how you feel, what you want, or what you're upset about is more important than someone else's well-being. That's narcissistic. It's kind of odd that there's not more mention of narcissism regarding domestic abuse, considering the tactics used by domestic abusers are pretty much textbook narcissist tactics and manipulation. There's not one example of domestic violence and abuse that you couldn't use as an example of the way narcissists behave. The two appear to be pretty much interchangeable. And that makes sense. Who else but narcissistic people give themselves permission to treat other people that way? People who engage in domestic abuse erode their victim's confidence, they gaslight, they destroy the victim's ability to think straight or rely on their perception, they turn others against the victim using lies, they manipulate the victim to do things they don't want to do, they isolate, they use threats, guilt, and even violence to keep the victim in line, they blame the victim for abuse. The victim in a domestic violence situation is totally subjugated by the abuser who believes their own needs, feelings, and desires are more important than anything. Sound familiar? There are 5 kinds of domestic abuse: physical, emotional, sexual, reproductive, and financial. As you can see in these graphics and anywhere else you'll look, in virtually all of these categories, the behaviors described are identical to the way that narcissistic people behave. There's a link in the description for this video if you need more examples of these types of behaviors. Not all narcissists do all these things, of course, but the relationship between this type of person and this type of behavior is too obvious to ignore. Domestic offenders abuse their loved ones because they want power and control over their victims. They fear being rejected, abandoned, humiliated, and powerless. They use tactics designed to weaken the victim so that they can control them more effectively and prevent these things from happening. After an abusive episode or a period of time, there's a, quote, honeymoon period where the abuser is sorry and attempts to win back the relationship with promises of good behavior. Again, sound familiar? In our community, we call that hoovering. Perhaps one of the reasons they don't mention narcissism more in relation to domestic violence is because they're afraid assigning a label associated with mental illness will make victims more likely to stay in the situation. And that's a valid fear. Many people believe if someone has a psychological disorder, they can't be blamed for their behavior and they're more likely not to hold it against them. That is incorrect. Listeners of this show know there is never an excuse for abuse. It is no accident and it is not beyond their control. They know what they're doing is wrong and they are making the choice to do it. People who truly cannot control themselves will behave improperly regardless of who's there or what's going on. This is not the case with narcissists. They can control themselves just fine if they need to. They are choosing not to. It is deliberate abuse, and they have no reason to stop if you don't leave. Too many people associate the word abuse with physical violence. Remember, if you are in any kind of relationship with a narcissistic person, whether they're your spouse or your mother or your sibling, you are likely in a domestic abuse situation. People get so wrapped up in trying to figure out what's wrong with this person that they may never even realize that all the domestic violence awareness commercials they've seen and all the posters they see hanging in the bus station pertain to their relationship. They might feel that their relationship is somehow different than, quote, normal domestic violence situations, that it's not like the ones you see in the movies or you hear about in the news. Well, it is the same. Every person who was ever killed by a partner thought their relationship was different too. If you are in a domestic abuse situation, please get out before it gets worse. It's not going to get better, and even if by some miracle it did, the damage to the relationship is already done. You deserve better, and I hope one day you realize that. I hope this clears a few things up for you. As always, I look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions, so please keep those coming.